Hello and welcome to another episode of the Uncommon Energy Podcast. On this week's episode, we'll talk about Charizard EX absolutely shocking the Pokemon world and dominating the Curitiba Regional Championships down in Brazil this past weekend. We'll talk about some ongoing registration issues that are happening for our European friends over across the pond and what we hope and think that Pokemon could or should do about these situations. We'll, of course, have Guess That Flavor Text, everyone's favorite segment of the podcast. And if you say it isn't, you're just lying to yourself. And then we'll wrap up this week's episode by talking about the potential of Pokemon considering changing the tournament format. There's been a lot of discussion about the time rules, but there was a tweet this week from someone who's a pretty high up person at the Pokemon Company International that would lead us to believe that they are considering making a change. We'll talk about all that and more. And then, of course, we'll also wrap things up after the episode over on our Patreon for the bonus episode, 30 extra minutes every single week. If you want to hear more from me and Azul, the best place to do it is over there on the Patreon. My name is Chip Ritchie, joined here as always by my friend and co-host Azul GG. What's up, Azul? How we doing, buddy? How's it been going? How's your week been?
Doing pretty good, Chip. Week was pretty good. Just a lot of content. I did restream some of the Curitiba Regional Championships. Just kind of caught the end of Top Cut and then the some of the later rounds in day one. The time zone actually ends up like lining up decently. They start at like 4 or 5 a.m. For me. I don't wake up until like 8 a.m. And like this time around, I like went to the gym and stuff ahead of time. I think next time I'm gonna go to the gym in the evening and like wake up at 8, just get ready and start streaming probably around like 9. Get some more rounds in to watch for their next.
So
Well,
you were
actually, to
like
be
watching it
honest,
live, right?
yeah, watching it live. Yeah, I didn't go
That's
back and
cool.
watch any of the earlier rounds. Yeah, watching it live is so much more enjoyable too. Because like when
For
you
sure.
watch the VOD, you kind of know how things are gonna go at some point. It's like in the like when you rewatch the VOD, the early rounds you don't really know who wins or loses, but like once you get to day 2, it's like, well, I know this person made top cut, or I saw them tweet that they made top 16, so it's they probably win this one, you know.
Yeah.
And then once it gets to top cut, you kind of know how it plays out. So yeah, watching it live is definitely way more enjoyable than watching the VOD. I still enjoy watching the VODs of the tournaments as well, but live is definitely the play. I don't unfortunately for the European ones, like they're all gonna be streamed this year, but like their streams start at like midnight for me. And I'm not trying to stay up from like midnight to 9 a.m. day one or 10 a.m. So
Yeah.
yeah, I have to kind of VOD review those. But like for the ones in Latin America, the time zones end up being pretty good. I just gotta, get on the stream a little bit
It's only
earlier.
1 hour ahead of Eastern time, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Yeah, in Brazil. So
I don't know. Do they have one time zone? How many times? They probably have a couple time zones in there, right?
that is probably true. It's a pretty big country.
But yeah, this time around it was a 4-hour difference for me, which would be a 3-hour or 1-hour difference for you. Um, but I mean, I was saying all this, but like they don't have any other major tournaments on the schedule, so I don't know if I'm gonna be watching another
Mhm.
championship live unless Australia gets some kind of streams happening. I actually looked up the time zone
Mhm.
difference because I was like thinking ahead to that, and actually that one lines up really well for me to potentially
Basically, all
watch.
of
But
Brazil is in the same time zone. A small sliver is in a little earlier and a small sliver is in a little later.
the small slivers in Eastern, and then whatever's
A small
after
sliver is
there.
2 hours ahead of Eastern, and the
Yeah.
majority of it is 1 hour ahead of Eastern,
Yeah, okay, makes sense. But yeah,
where all
yeah,
the big
just
cities are, it looks like.
just another content-filled week for me. Nothing really crazy happened, I don't think. But yeah, been having a good time with the streams and stuff specifically. Been having a ton of fun with that. But what about you, Chip? How was your week?
My week was good. My week was good. Yeah, not too much going on, to be honest. I watched a lot of football this weekend, which was fun. I've been like traveling the last couple weekends, so I haven't gotten to like sit down and watch a lot of the football games. I love professional football, so it was fun to sit and watch that, and then college football on Saturday a little bit. Um, but yeah, not too much happening. We are finally back recording on a Tuesday this week.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we've recorded on a or posted an episode on Tuesday. You know, if you don't hear from, I said this at the end of last week's episode, but for anyone who didn't listen all the way to the end or missed it, maybe, if you don't hear from us on Tuesday, just assume that there will be an episode Wednesday. If you don't hear from
Yeah.
us Wednesday, go check the Twitter, and we probably tweeted why there wasn't an episode. But Tuesday or Wednesday, especially like coming up here in October, we're gonna be traveling, like, every single weekend the month of October, so there's a
Yeah,
decent chance that a few October episodes will be Wednesday episodes, but we'll see.
yeah, the one after Peoria for sure will be a Wednesday episode. Next week should be on Tuesday. One after Peoria will definitely be a Wednesday, and then uh,
We'll
hopefully not
try to
all of
stay
them
on
after
track.
that for the rest of
Yeah.
October will be on Tuesdays. But yeah, we're trying to stay on track, doing our best. Back on it for this week at least.
Yeah. Made it happen, made it happen. And speaking of making it happen, a certain dark type EX card was able to make it happen down in South America this week. That's right, Charizard EX, a card that pretty much everyone else had written off, but a group of like the top level, and I mean like the best of the best Latin America players chose to pick this card up, built a deck with it, and it not only did it win the tournament, but it absolutely dominated the tournament with 5 of the top 8 placements being not 8 of the 8. It's not Australia Palkia levels out here, but 5 of the 8 top 8 spots were given to Charizard EX, and it was William
Taken by
Azevedo.
Charizard is a
What's
better way
up?
to say it. You said given to Charizard. Taken by Charizard, I think
Taken
is a
by,
bit
yeah, not given.
yeah.
Nothing's given, nothing for free out here. Charizard earned its keep. And it was eventually William Azevedo getting the win. So congratulations, William. He's a former regional champion. So yep, someone who's not surprising to see him winning yet another one. He actually won this event. Oh wait, no, sorry. That is literally this event. I thought that was like an old Curitiba regionals. My bad.
This is the first time I've heard of
Listed here online.
Curitiba. This might be the first Curitiba regional championships, I'm
Yeah,
pretty
it's the first
sure.
time I've heard of Curitiba,
Yeah.
but yeah, congrats to William. And yeah, Charizard dominating Azul. We kind of had written this card off a little bit. Most Americans, Europeans, it felt like had written the card off. It hadn't seen success in either of our two events, Pittsburgh or Barcelona. Was
I got top 8
played
in Barcelona.
sparsely. Yeah, top 8 in
Or top
Barcelona. Yeah, yeah,
4.
can't
Yeah.
forget. But compared to like what this is, it's a big difference, right? What leads to this, being the outcome here in Brazil?
I mean, like figuring the list out probably is a little bit of something there. Like we see like three of the 5 lists that made top 8 was this build that William played. Along with Leonardo and Pedro. They were all walking the same list. And there was a couple other players as well. I tried to pick them out. Otavio and Ricardo, I think as well, were rocking this. And
Well,
so
yeah, on
was
Limitless, you can just click on the list and it'll tell you who played the same 60.
well, no, but they're not all the same 60. It's like the same
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
59.
But
It's
you
like there's
usually see
one with
some
a
of them.
radiant. Yeah, there's one with a radiant Greninja. Some have Mawile, some don't. I think Petrucci played 3 Lost City. So like there are some differences in the lists for sure. A couple of them. And then we see outside of that list that was like piloted by a ton of the top players. There was still 2 Arceus Charizards as well in top cut. The only Charizard not in top 8, Charizard build not in top 8 is the Lost Zone Charizard, but there's still 2 of those in top 32 as well. There's still 2 Lost Zone Charizards in top 32. So
And
yeah,
also a Gallade Charizard in
yeah,
top 32.
yeah. So all the variants of Charizard that are known, I would say, had a top 32 appearance. Of course, this Charizard Pidgeot build, the most dominant out of all of them. But then Charizard Arceus really not too far behind with 2 top 8s, another one in 17th place. Gabriel Sameta, who's definitely a well-known player,
Mhm.
familiar face. So yeah, Charizard in general dominating. The new build without the Arceus. I played actually quite a bit with it myself on stream, literally right after the regional concluded. Uh, William tweeted out the list. I took the list, started playing with it, and it definitely feels like the best Charizard deck I've played with so far. Like it feels like more consistently than any of the other builds. Gets that turn 2 Candy Charizard or Candy Pidgeot into the Candy Charizard, and then you just swing with Charizard on turn 2, and you just kind of go from there. So feels more consistent than any of the Charizard builds I played so far. But it was close, and yeah, like I said, the Arceus builds are still up there as well. So yeah, just a lot of Charizard in general at this tournament.
Yeah, 40 players in day 2 and 12 of them were playing Charizard. That's a massive, that's like
Yeah,
that's crazy. That's big
Lugia
percentages. That's
numbers.
what you would expect to see from like a Gardevoir or, Lost Tina maybe, but it was indeed Charizard for this event. So it is super interesting, right? Because Pittsburgh didn't do super well. It had the one top 4 placement in Barcelona, but they were cooking down there in Brazil. They came up with this list, and it's definitely, very different from what we've seen. Does play the 4 Arvin as kind of the
Yeah.
engine of the deck, to get things set up. I mean, I guess your engine, if there's an engine, right, is Pidgeot EX, but Arvin, like, gets you into the Pidgeot EX, which, gets you whatever other pieces you need. There's also a couple of V Pokemon in here, Entei V and Luminion V, with a couple Forest Sealstones. So what most people, and I would say, like, going into this tournament, the most popular way to play Charizard was definitely with Arceus V Star. And
It
this
might have
list
been
kind
Lost Zone,
of,
to be honest. Like,
you
at this
think
point, it
Lost
might have
Zone
been.
had kind of taken that spot?
I think after Barcelona, I wouldn't have been surprised if Lost Zone was the most popular way Charizard was played, but it's probably pretty close between Arceus, the Lost Zone build, and then just with how many, um well, I don't know, maybe the this build without
I
Arceus
think
or Lost Zone
it's,
probably wasn't super popular. I would say it was
yeah.
I would say it's probably close between Arceus and Lost Zone being the most popular,
Yeah, I think it's
but
probably Arceus, but I could see it being close. Uh, I mean, this kind of takes that idea, right, of like having Pidgeot EX as you're consistent throughout the game, and then Arceus V Star to like get your early setup, and it just takes away the Arceus and gives you the different V Star power, but you have a little more utility, right? You get the Luminion V, and then you get Entei V, which is actually a pretty solid attacker. It's got a lot of HP too, so it doesn't really go down super easily to a lot of stuff. It might hang around for a turn. Um, Soak up a hit, which makes it not too bad. But yeah, Azul, like, you played with it a lot. You think it's the best way to play Charizard currently? Like, and does it feel like this result is gonna really impact things for Peoria in just a couple weeks?
yeah, like I said, definitely felt like the best way to play it that I played so far. But it's like close. It doesn't feel like head and shoulders above the other Charizard builds, and it also doesn't feel like it's like broken, right? I mean, the result from it was very solid, right? 3 in the top 8. And there were still 2 other Charizard Arceus as well. So the meta feels like it definitely probably was setting up pretty well for it. Like it's got a good Lugia matchup. None of the Lugia players I'm sure were playing Cobalion, or very few, if any of them were playing the Cobalion, which is like
Yeah.
the way that Lugia was what Lugia needs to play to really have a solid time against Charizard. Otherwise, it just gets kind of run over by Charizard. The HP is just too high. You're trading back and forth until eventually the Charizard is one hit KO and you never get that potential. So if you're not rocking the Cobalion or the Urshifu isn't as good of an answer because the fact that it gives up 3 prize cards eventually and can kind of be boss and messed with before you actually utilize it, makes it not as good of a answer to charge. I think the Cobalion is definitely a little bit better. But like if stuff like
Agreed.
Miraidon's popular, Lugia's popular without an answer. And even with the answer, I'm not actually quite sure if Lugia, even with the Cobalion, is actually favored against Charizard or if it's just like a 50-50. And then we even saw like the list that William played and a couple of the other players who were playing this kind of build, there is that Mawile in there for the Gardevoir matchup. So catching the Gardevoir players off guard, probably. I don't think many people are playing the Penny or the Switch card in the Gardevoir right now. And actually, Leonardo came into my chat when I was playing with the deck after the regional concluded, and he said it was basically there for the Gardevoir matchup. Mostly was the Mawile. So, and he also thinks it's unfavored. Like I even asked him, I was like, "Do you think the Gardevoir matchup is unfavored? I feel like it'd be probably pretty close." And he says, "Yeah, the double reversal energy is just like not a good time for Charizard still." So even the players who are playing this deck thinks it has a rough Gardevoir matchup. But the Mawile Tech is probably what carried them through that matchup for a couple of them at the very least, to get them those wins or even ties. You just squeak out one game against them, and then Gardevoir takes a long time to play through games, so it ends up in a tie. But that makes a big difference for potentially even getting to that top 8 to begin with. So moving forward, yeah, it felt like the meta was right for it. The cheesiness of Mawile probably helped quite a bit as well. The Gardevoir players aren't really prepared for Mawile right now, so that definitely helped. One thing I did notice that was kind of lacking in the top 32, or maybe at the tournament in general, was Lost Tina, which I think is also tough for Charizard. I was actually predicting Francisco to win the tournament. Francisco did get second with the Lost Tina. But if you watch the finals, Francisco definitely drew the those kind of hands that gives Lost Tina its reputation,
I mean,
for
he just
sure.
like passed
For
twice
4
in
turn
both
yeah,
games, right?
yeah.
Like,
And still almost won both games, was yeah, the matchup does not seem good for Charizard, to be honest. After kinda watching that play out, I'm not, like, super experienced in the matchup, but, like, piecing it together mentally, and then after watching that one game from Francisco, that one matchup, Francisco versus William, definitely looks like it's probably leaning towards a favorable matchup for the Lost Tina for sure, to be honest. Because it's just like, yeah, um, the comeback potential in that matchup is just so high. And like the early game, like when you're just kind of punching Zards with Tina, the Zards not want to KO you back, and you can utilize that 280 damage with the Sableye later on. There's like so many little things you can do as the Tina player. So moving forward, I don't think the Charizard is going to be like S tier going into like the meta of what do we got? Peoria coming up. I think there's gonna be a little bit more Lost Tina, probably, especially if there's more hype around the Zard. Lugia's gonna be playing Cobalion. Does that make it a unfavorable matchup for Zard? I'm not sure. I think we'll see a little bit more Lost Tina though as well. And then also like now that the Mawile is out of the bag, are the Gardevoirs? But there's like that kind of game of chicken there, right? Are the Gardevoirs gonna play
Yeah.
Penny? And if they play Penny, do you cut your Mawile? But if you're cutting your Mawile because you think they're playing Penny, do they not play the Penny, right? So it's up to the Gardevoir players to decide whether or not to play the Penny and the Charizard players whether or not they want to play them all while. So I think it's very solid moving forward for sure, which is really cool to see because it feels like the meta was getting a little bit stale. A nice shakeup like this always feels really, really good. I think I saw Ian Robb basically tweet that out earlier today. It was like, it's really cool that we have this evolution of the meta hit, even though it feels like the meta was really, really stale at this point. You know, Mew's not looking like a really good play anymore.
Yeah, so I mean, it definitely feels like this will have a decent impact on Peoria. Peoria is a slightly different format. We will have the cards from 151 legal, but
Yeah.
with the exception of Mew EX, maybe the Zapdos, it doesn't feel like there's going to be too much. And then, like, obviously, people playing Charizard will upgrade their Charmanders and Pidgeys, but other than
Yeah.
that, um,
Little
yeah, it'll just
incremental
be kind of the
buffs.
meta, how the meta reacts, how the meta changes. There was one other surprise here in the top eight. We had Juliana making top eight with Arceus Umbreon. Now that's a name I've not heard in quite a long time, and it was a pretty unique build with the. It was Arceus, Umbreon, Duraludon, kind of the usual suspects, but had
Yeah.
a 1/1 Lucario V Star in the list.
Yeah, I actually have to be honest, I have no idea what the Lucario is good against. I'm sure it's good against something. I have no clue what it's good against though. I'm sure the Umbreon or the Duraludon felt probably really good with how popular Lugia's kind of been. That's just like
Yeah.
as soon as you set your Duraludon up, you're just kind of cooking. And also like Lugia is not a deck that's very good at going turn two boss knockout anything ever. It just usually can't do that. Usually your supporter has to be committed to actually getting the Archeops in the discard pile on turn two. From turn to one to turn two, that's what you're focused on. So even just like a 1/1 Duraludon in this build is like all you need, right? Get a Duraludon, free dubs against the Lugia deck. Also, pretty good matchup against like anything like the Rapid Strike as well. The Duraludon's like really good against Rapid Strike decks as well. So you got that going for you as well. But the Charizard matchup is definitely tough for pretty much all Arceus decks. Arceus with Charizard, I don't know, maybe that can compete against other Charizards better. But this
Maybe
kind
that's
of
one of the
deck,
things Lucario is for. If they overextend their energy, but like they have to do that for.
and it's telegraphed, right? You're benching the Lucario
Yeah.
V before
And
even
also it
I
means
guess
you didn't use Starbirth as well, right?
yeah, but does anyone actually know what Lucario V-Star does? That's also probably they bench Lucario V and you're just like, all right, what am I playing around now at this point? Yeah, I'm not sure about the Lucario V to be honest. I'm not sure what matchup it like slots really. Oh, I guess maybe Maridon, right? That's got to be because actually this deck does
Oh,
struggle against Maridon.
that's
Maridon is
1,000%
tough.
what it's for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because yeah, especially with Bravery Charm now, you just don't have a way to one hit KO Maridon, but the Lucario will get there a little bit more often. I'm
Gosh,
sure
its
there's
first attack doesn't even KO a Miraidon with a Bravery Charm, though.
That's true, actually. I seen KO the Raikou still. Damn, that's
Well,
tough still.
and this little guy doesn't either, the little one.
Well, the Aura Star does though.
Right. But then you had to
If it didn't
not
use Starbirth,
use Starbirth to establish your 1/1 other V Star line, right?
it's something, right? And we need something. That matchup's tough. That
Yeah,
matchup's really.
it's
I
fair. It's fair.
when I was playing Arceus Duraludon before NAIC, I think I hit Sajin on the ladder like 4 times in a row or something in one day, and I won one game. I think the matchup was so hard. I was like, bro, just come on, let me beat him one time. The
And
matchup's
Sajin was
tough.
like, "Yes, give me that free ladder
LP,
points."
yeah. Yeah, and then the last deck in top eight that we could quickly mention. Nothing super special about the list, except for maybe the headquarters, the Pokemon League headquarters. But it's a Guardy, double reversal energy Guardy. I guess the
Board
things to point
Guardy, as
out,
some people call it,
pretty
right?
close. No Force Steel Stone, no Luminion, no Palpad. Um, the four stadium count though, which no worker though. I feel like we've usually been seeing people like go to a worker before they go to a third stadium. But has the Artisan, the Pokemon League headquarters, and the Collapse. It feels like Collapse is always too good to not play. And
Yeah.
then Pokemon League headquarters is really strong in the deck as well, especially with like stuff like Maridon floating around, like making Maridon work a little bit harder. You don't hate to do that, to be honest, right? So
Yeah.
so
The
yeah.
problem I never love those passive stadiums because they're just so easy for your but like
I mean, if I'm owning a lost
there's got
box
to
to
be
one,
some way to determine the percentage, right? You'd have to play probably too many games to actually get a real number, but like how often does your opponent like does the league headquarters like actually stay in play to matter? Like it forces your opponent to find something else, obviously, but like most Miraidon lists are playing 2 to 3 stadiums already,
Oh, yeah,
right?
it's definitely
Lost
more in there
Box
for
has
Lost
Lost
Box.
Vacuum, right?
Well, hold on, hold on. I'm not putting it in play turn 2 against Lost Box. I'm going Iono to 1 league headquarters. Like, they're
Okay,
not
sure.
Sableye me on that next turn unless they draw the stones, like,
Yeah, or
they're
like one Mirage Gate.
yeah, and even against, like, Lost Tina, that can be a really good strategy as well. Because sometimes oh, the Mirage Gate, yeah. I know, but at that point, they have to, like, get the Super Rod plus the Mirage Gate plus bench the Sableye,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it makes them work quite a bit
They
harder
didn't
for
bench it
sure.
before they knew they were gonna get Iona Dawn?
Hey, man, people only play the 2 Sableye, so it's so much harder to keep the Sableyes in play. 3
Yeah.
Sableye, 3 Sableye, give it a try. You'll thank me later. Yeah, no, the Pokemon League HQ also against Lost Tina as well. I think it's because like sometimes the way that Lost Tina closes out the game is Sableye. So yeah, throwing the headquarters out there to throw them off hopefully can be the game changer in that one as well. Even though like it's not the Lost Box deck, like against any Lost on deck with Sableye, basically
Mhm.
the HQ can be pretty powerful. Definitely like the idea of it is something that's but it's like not something that's out of left field. Like oh my gosh, the League HQ, I've never seen or heard of that before. People have been trying that out since kind of the card release. We just haven't seen it be like super popular, not kind of a mainstay.
Other
Um,
than that, though, it's a lot of what we would expect, except I think there's, like, quite a bit less Lost Box than you would think, and that's probably due in large part to the dominance of Charizard, right? Like, that matchup is pretty tough for Lost Zone. Just a
yeah,
few in day 2, and they're all kind of in the mid none of them in top
specifically
16.
Yeah, specifically like the Arceus build and then the build that like William used to win the tournament. Like the Lost Zone builds are a little bit easier to deal for Lost Box to deal with, and
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
Guardy Curlia build is easier for Lost Box because there's so many things to pick on with Sableye. But when all the Pokemon you set up is just Charizards and Pidgeot EXs, it's like, well, I got to get through these big HP Pokemon at this point. So I think we're gonna probably see stuff like the Tropius probably start to make its way into Lost Zone decks. Like if you want to compete against these Zards, you just need something that hits hard
Yeah.
doesn't give up 2 prize cards like the Dragonite, right? You need to see it hit him hard, get some extra damage and play for Sableye to work with, but you're not trying to give up 2 prize cards on that trade-off, so
Super effective glasses, are we ready for it?
no, I
Town
don't think so.
store, super effective glasses? Come
With
on
the
now.
trophy. I think I'd rather play, like, the punching things. I think the punching things are probably
The
better.
punchy things.
Yeah, the punching things. Whatever that what is it called? The
Vengeful
Vengeful
punch.
Punch, yeah. Vengeful Punch, Town Store. Dude, I was, like, thinking you could start people have played some weird tools in Lost Box decks when, like, you had no access to them. The choice like, I even,
You played one
uh
choice belt, yeah.
yeah, we played one choice. Actually, it's crazy how much value I got out of that, actually. That was kind of insane. I probably got I shouldn't have got as much value as I should have got as I got out of that at Fresno Regionals, but, yeah, we played one choice belt at Fresno, which was I mean, it's like, okay, like, but, now they have Town Store. People, like, were playing, like, one of Choice Belts, one of Bravery Charms. Now that we have Town Store, get the Bravery Charm in there, the Choice Belt, it finds 4 Seal Stone. I don't know, there could be something there, some kinda Lost Box deck with, like, the whole squad. Because Bravery Charm is, like, really good on,
Yeah.
like, a Dragonite early game in
And
certain
there's no,
matchups,
like,
but you can't find it.
it feels like for just, like, turbo Lost Box, like, yeah, Pokestop is still really good, right? But
Yeah.
none of the stadiums feel, like, amazing. Like, Pokestop's still good, Artisan is good. Town Store probably fits maybe it's, like, a little less value than those other 2 aforementioned ones, but
Yeah, I think it depends
none of them
on
feel, like, obvious, like, "Oh, yeah, this is the stadium we're absolutely playing in Lost Box," you know?
yeah, we even looked at, like if you look at, Estrada's list, having, like, the 1 Beach Corp, but cut back on the Switch cards by 1, cut back on the Nest Balls by 1, but played Artisan, and then also had a one of Pokestop. The one of Pokestop is really just nice for late game with Kyogre,
Yeah.
for sure.
I
But
think if
then
you're
the other
playing
ones are
Ogre,
like,
you gotta play the at least some count of stop for sure.
yeah. But like in the middle of the game, the Artisan. If you're playing like a one prize game, the Artisan is so powerful. If the Artisan or Beach Court sticks in play,
Yeah.
Lost Box gets so like getting 2 uses out of either of those stadiums is just absurdly strong. And the Pokestop is like you could get value off Pokestop, but you can also get nothing off Pokestop, and it could even hurt you more than it helps you. So it's
You
like
know what you can
the
always
ones are
get though?
consistent. What?
A vengeful punch with Town Store, buddy.
Yeah, there we go. Or the bravery charm, I'm just saying, like
Yeah, yeah. No, seems cool. Also, I didn't realize until I saw this name, but this is Vinny Fernandez, yeah, getting his first Masters Regionals,
yeah.
top 32. Pretty cool. Yeah, Vinny's like always he's been one of the online grinders for the last couple years. And
Did well in
got
seniors
second
last year as
place at
well.
LAIC this past
Yeah.
year in seniors, and his brother won worlds in seniors. So, he's
His brother's actually, to be honest, Gabriel's showing up, and Gabriel won seniors at Curitiba.
nice.
So yeah, Vinny's got
The
to. I
Fernandez
know Vinny's
brothers,
in
you got to look
masters
out.
now. Yeah, Vinny's in masters now, but Vinny's got to step it up. Gabriel's showing him up big time for sure.
I mean, top 32, your first Masters regionals, taking
No,
home a
it's
grand. It feels pretty good, right?
yeah, but someone like Vinny, very competitive, wants more than that for
Of
sure.
course.
Vinny wanted to top 8 or further this event for sure. Vinny is not
Well, we did
happy.
do a couple predictions for this tournament going in last week, just kind of last second. We each picked a deck that we thought would win. I picked Lost Box, you picked Gardevoir. You were definitely way closer than me. Lost Box
Yeah,
nowhere to be seen in the top 16, but there's quite a few Gardevoirs in the
Vinny
top
tried for
16,
you.
including one in top 8.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Gardevoir is like such a reliable deck to assume it'll do well, right? Because like some kind of decks in the format can get boxed, and that's why Gardevoir is my BDIF in this meta, right? Like overall in the meta, not just like a meta for a tournament, because you can't box Gardevoir out, right? Like when higher HP stuff, like the Lugia, like the Charizard, become more popular, Lost Box is going to struggle. When the high HP, the high damage of something like a Charizard comes up, that's going to be trouble for something like a Miraidon. But Gardevoir is
Mhm.
always just like, I mean, the one deck that Garver used to have trouble with, which I feel like it really doesn't anymore. We even saw whose list was it? Who was like really playing around the lost. It was Gustavo's list. Yeah, Gustavo played double Poke League headquarters. So Gustavo was prepared for the Lost Box matchup. Gustavo was prepared
Oh,
for the Lost Box
geez.
matchup. So Garver can even go further down a certain tech route to like Tech 4 or something like the Lost Box matchup. So it's really hard to box Garvor out of the meta. It probably won't actually ever happen until it rotates, to be honest. It's actually once we lose Shiny Arcana, Gardevoir, it gets a lot worse. But so yeah, no surprise to see Gardevoir
Yeah. I
doing
mean,
well.
also eventually we'll get to like Scarlet Violet on, and then Refinement Curly is not in the format either. That'll be a
I mean,
tough day.
that's two rotations, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah, true.
losing Shiny Arcana is a huge hit for sure. Like that's
And
a tough one.
Zacian, does Zacian leave too? I think it does too.
Yeah, but we have Mimikyu. We have the literally Mimikyu just replaces it. That some people are even playing at some point.
Oh,
You
yeah,
remember?
it's like almost the
Yeah,
same, right? Yeah.
yeah. People are doing the Mimikyu to get around Vulpix,
Right.
because it doesn't have the ability, and basically does the same thing as
I
It is.
mean,
I
Zacian
mean, I'm not
has
going to
like
question you.
Roar of the Sword's pretty
Yeah,
good, right?
Zacian. Yeah, I mean, Roar of the Swords, whatever. You don't want to bench your Zacian before
Zacian.
before you use it. Like you don't want to just like chilling there to get knocked out. But
Yeah.
if you open it, I mean, it's better to have the sword than not the sword. But what is Mimikyu's first attack? Is the real question. Hold up.
It
Does
like
Mimikyu have like a killer one energy
it like
attack?
grabs the energy, I think.
Or does it like do
So
the same thing? No, you may switch this Pokemon with one of your
oh,
bench
right.
Pokemon. Honestly, that might be better.
No, because people were playing that with Klefki whenever
Oh yeah, you could hit and run.
yeah.
That's right. But that actually honestly might be better than Zacian. If you open it going second, I'm not trying to leave. If we're going second, I'm not trying to leave Zacian in my active. Zacian.
You gotta
You know?
commit, dude. Either
What, Zacian
commit
or
to saying it
Zacian?
wrong or like learn to say it right?
Yeah, but that was the Curitiba event. It was like I said, the meta shakeup was really, really cool to
Whoa,
see.
whoa, whoa, whoa,
Uh
whoa. We gotta recap one more prediction. Okay.
oh,
Listen, I gave you
true, true, true.
you got even though Gardevoir didn't win, sure, you win that one. But I gotta get multiple points or something for this one because we each picked a player to win, and your boy picked William as Veto to win, and he did get the win. You picked Pedro, and Pedro got top 8, so you were close. It was a good guess, but not the best guess.
Yeah, not the best guess. I was close. Nah, yeah, you had the best possible guess, Chip. Congratulations.
I don't think either of
Um,
us could have predicted Charizard though. That's the
yeah, I wouldn't have predicted either of them to play Charizard, to be honest, either. But
yeah.
hey, it worked out. Yeah, it's really cool to see. But yeah, that is the Curitiba Regional Championships. The meta gets shaken up. Cool new way to play Charizard. Yeah, it's just cool to see. The meta's still evolving like this is really, really cool to see. And that's what I love. I love seeing this development happen where it's like we need a different region to have their first major tournament to get all the heads, all the heads of Pokemon, all the people who play Pokemon, get all their brains working.
Yeah.
Like when they haven't had their event yet, they haven't been able to apply what everything they've been working on at a major event yet. So we also kind of wait until the first Latin American events happens. Then boom, all of a sudden, new way to play Charizard. Charizard dominates the tournament. And we had our first event in North America. There was the first event in Europe in Barcelona. Saw a little bit more from Barcelona than we did from uh, Pittsburgh. I guess we're just not as creative as the rest of the world. I think Japan
Yeah,
blows
we're just a
everyone out
bunch
of the
of NA
water.
drones over
Yeah,
here.
I think Japan blows everyone out of the water in terms of like what does well at their tournaments as far as like creativity and innovation and new stuff. Of course, they get the new cards before us, of course,
Do you
but
feel
yeah.
like that is like a thing where it feels like people are I don't know, there's so much pressure on like each event. It feels like with BFLs and trying to maximize your points for each tournament. That it almost feels like people, I mean, because of how massive our tournaments are as well, people are like less willing to take risks almost. They're like more willing to pick the safe deck that they know is good, right? And not like bounce things off the wall. Now, some people are still willing to do that, right? Like play something out of nowhere that's a surprise, but it feels like there's less people that are willing to take a risk and play like their homebrew of Charizard to the tournament, right?
I think it's just everything's gotten a little bit more calculated, and with how much information share is out there, you have a better guess on what people will play and
Mhm.
at what level they'll play it at. So you have a better framework to work around as to like what you're testing against. Which leads you to because if you can't really predict what everyone else is playing, then your wacky ideas will theoretically be better because no one can predict what you're playing either. But when you can predict what everyone else is playing, the a lot of the stuff gets like flushed out really fast as to what is bad and what is good, right? So like it's just kind of like the evolution of Pokemon now, the current metagame just happens faster. So it's harder to find those decks that are actually worth bringing to an event that are different from what everyone else is rocking. But we still see it from time to time, right? And especially it's very nice to see this tournament, the third major tournament of the meta, we're still seeing some really cool innovation and the meta getting shaken up and everything like that. So I do think I think there is a little bit of a factor of that though. I think people are a little bit more scared, and a lot of people just jump on playing the BDIF, which is something I'm always trying to not do. It's something I advocate against. Like I think you have a higher chance to instead of playing 50-50 or playing mirror matches against all the other top players in the world, I'd rather bring something different to make them have to work a little harder potentially, or like take less straight up of a 50-50. I'd rather counter the top deck a little bit than like play the top deck myself. But, yeah, so I think it's a little bit of both. I think a little bit of it is like everything just happens faster in the Pokemon TCG than it used to. The meta evolves faster. What's good and what's bad gets figured out faster. So there's a little bit less to innovate on. It's a little bit harder to innovate, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. You just got to like the people who put in that extra work are going to be rewarded that much more. And we see that here, I think specifically at this championship where you see three players playing they're three very good players, but they're all playing the exact same build. They all ended up in top eight because they put in that extra time. And even outside of that, like we mentioned, there's like three other players playing this exact same build in the top 32 as well, right? So um, I think it's a little bit of both, though. A little bit of both. A little bit of fear of just being like I could play my deck that I've been testing. It's been doing really well. That no one really else is playing right now, and I think it's good. Or I could just play Gardevoir again, right? And a lot of people fall back on just playing their comfort deck, even at like the top level of things. But hopefully, we see that changing a little bit, where more people a little bit more willing to take a risk and like trust their process and trust their system. Because if your system leads you to believe that this homebrew that you have is really, really good, then you should probably commit and play instead of just playing Gardevoir again. You probably have a little bit higher chance of success overall. I think so.
So for our next topic, it's something we've talked about a little bit over the last few weeks, but kind of feels like things came to a head this past week with continued registration issues for our friends over in Europe. Also, this is an issue down in South America. We just see a little bit less of it
Yeah.
on our Twitter timelines, I feel like, because, there's the language barrier for a lot of, players and stuff like that. But yeah, registration just continues to be a problem for players in non-American countries. It feels like event caps are very low, and the number of people interested in playing the game just continues to increase. But there was a regionals registration for the Lille, France regionals, and it sold out basically instantly within seconds. And
Yeah.
saw tons of tweets from people saying they didn't get in. I actually think was this like a second wave for Lille? Like, did they open up a few more spots? It might have
No, I
been because I
I
feel like a
think
couple weeks ago
this.
I saw people not getting in.
Ye or do they have like a second wave coming up?
No, I think this week was the second wave, but I'm not 100% sure. But regardless, a lot of people just like last shot to get in, did not make it in. I even saw a tweet that the person who won the Lille regional championships last season did not get into the tournament. Fabio Battistella did not make it in. Was unable to register, unfortunately. Um, which is definitely a bummer. I mean, I almost feel like winning a tournament should get you like a pass back into it next year, right? Like, I don't know.
I mean,
Yeah, I
they don't
mean,
always
you think
hold.
that top players should just get free, passes into all the events anyway, but
Yeah.
um but it feels like, the person who won, because that's like one of the main storylines, like from a content caster point of view. One of the first things I look at when we're looking at players is who won this tournament last year.
Yeah.
Because that's like always kind of a cool story for me to try to identify and like try to follow.
Um.
Not an option for the casters in Lille, France, though.
Um. Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking at the Twitter here for Play the Championships. Who is tournament center? Who's running everything? It doesn't look like they actually opened up any more spots. Maybe some got. I think some got maybe reallocated, or like they reopened up the ones. It looks
Hmm.
like they'd open a couple more. Yeah, it does look like they opened up a couple more actually. Um. I mean, one of the things with that I was thinking about is like tournaments don't happen every year, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I mean, it's not like
the same tournaments don't happen every year.
obviously the format is going to be way different than it was last year, and like,
Yeah.
more eyes are on the people who have won more recently most often, but it's always kind of a cool little callback, I feel like.
Yeah, and I think it is
Um
something you should build a storyline around at the tournament as far as like the stream stuff goes. Is like they won this one last season, and here they are again, playing here in the tournament again. So it does kind of suck to like even on like a personal note for some players to like not have the chance to defend their
defend,
title,
yeah.
right? So yeah, that kind of sucks. But yeah. I mean, yeah, I've talked about the I think there should be some players who achieve a certain level of status throughout the game, and we do a couple different ways to do it. That there should just kind of be guaranteed spots at tournaments, even as far as like reaching out to like content creator stuff like that. Like, but I mean, we don't have to go over that again. I talk about it enough on my stream as well. Um, but yeah, like this time around, and especially like something that was really telling, I think this time around is a lot of players who are very experienced, like kind of veterans in the game in general, and experienced with the registrations process, especially over in Europe with stuff selling out so quickly. I saw a lot of names that I usually don't see tweeting out about this kind of stuff, or tweeting out how they didn't make it into the tournament, right? And these are players who have been here before, so these players are sitting at their computer or on their phone 10 seconds before registration goes live and is trying to register as soon as registration goes live. And even they're missing registration, which means there has to be a ton of people trying to register for these tournaments immediately when registration is going live, much more than there has been in last season in Europe.
Yeah, and it's also like driven some people to the breaking point, kind of, it feels like. I saw a couple different tweets of people saying like this tweet from Julian, who has done a lot of work with the Poke Data website. I use it personally for a lot of things to like find local events and like check standings and stuff like that at tournaments from time to time. And he tweeted out, not getting into Lil killed all the motivation I had left, and that he's just like dumping all the information that of all the projects he's worked on in regards to the game. Like that's a bummer to see. Someone who's
Yeah.
committed a lot to the game, and making information more easily accessible for the player base is just like, yep, you know what? I'm out.
Yeah, it does suck. And we saw a couple other players tweeting out kind of like similar thoughts on like, well, do I even want to play anymore this season? Especially like for the players who like only get to go to a couple majors throughout the year. These players might not be going to every major in Europe. This is one of the ones that works for them, and now they can't go. And of course, not everyone's going to get in. Like I've said before on the podcast, in the past in general, we do want to see these tournaments capping. Overall, you want them to hit the cap. You want to show that there's growth in the game, so that way it
Yep.
tells the organizers, okay, they're capping. Let's get the bigger venues next year. But that's not the response we saw from tournaments capping in Europe last season. I don't know how it was for Latin America overall. I wasn't really paying attention to it overall, to be honest. They're obviously capping this season, and the cap for Curitiba was super low at only 400 players. It was capped at, which is like ridiculous in my opinion. So there's like no response to the growth of the very obvious growth of the game in Latin America or in Europe, like there is in America, which is just like absurd, especially for Europe. I feel like it's very obvious last season, from what I could tell, it was very obvious that there was a lot more people who wanted to be playing in these major tournaments last season, and it's obviously going into this season. It was going to grow even more, and the demand hasn't even been close to being met for the for this season so far. And it was actually kind of funny on Twitter this week. Someone pointed it out that it did almost kind of seem like the European tournament organizers were just trying not to have just to have not have 800 players at the tournaments, because the tournament caps are like 788 and stuff like that. And for anyone who doesn't know, when you hit 800 players, um, the kicker for the extra round in day two kicks in, where there's one more round
Yeah.
in day two. So I don't think that was the actual reason that they did it. I even put out a tweet myself, but um, it probably is venue space. But the problem is venue space. Why are they not getting bigger venues this year when it was very obvious last year that there was the want and need for more players to play in the game? And this is like what could actually kill growth and momentum in the game in Europe. Like over here, like Chip said, in North America, we don't have any of these problems. We have like no problems for our circuit right now here in North America. But over in Europe, they're having about the same caps they had last year as this year. Even when last year they were hitting the caps, they're very aggressively hitting the caps this year as well. If we see something like this similar again next year, that will start to kill the growth and the want and drive for people to play Pokemon in the game. We already start to see it with this, like, what is this, the third special event or their third major event registration going up with this one. That we already see some players being like, I'm kind of checked for the season. This kind of killed my vibe. I
Yeah.
don't really feel like playing Pokemon right now. And I even saw some other players tweeting like they don't even feel like going to League Cups and stuff, because like their drive and motivation to play in League Cups is to test for the upcoming major tournament that they're now not going to. So now they don't even want to go to League Cups. So I think, like I said, tournaments capping is overall a good thing. Them capping in 30 seconds is not a good thing. The only thing you can hope for at that point is to hopefully see a response from the tournament organizers to get bigger tournaments next season. But over there in Europe, that's not what's happening. There's the same tournament sizes, but it definitely seems like these 700 player, 600 player, 700 player European tournaments could be up to like 1,000, 1,200 players, because it's capping out in like literally seconds when registration goes live.
Yeah. And I think part of the issue for some people is that the system that is used to register right now through Arcanine Labs isn't truly like a first come, first serve. So
Yeah.
there's upsides and downsides, I think, to a lot of the different options. And there's really no good solution, right? Demand is way higher than the supply right now. Way more people want to play these events than will be able to with the tournament space that's been allocated. Now, obviously, we both think more tournament space should have been allocated. They should have planned better. They didn't. We find ourselves in this situation. There's only so many spots available. And the way that the Arcanine system works right now is that you can like click to register. You might know this a little better than me. I don't totally like understand how it works, but isn't it like you can click to register and then it like will randomly assign you a spot in line compared to like all the other people who are registering at the same time? Like it's not quite a
Yeah.
queue system, but
My understanding of it is it basically like everyone who clicks to it feels like a pool of people. My understanding of it is that like if like let's say 1,000 player, like there's a pool for 1,000 people, 5,000 people click to register. The first 1,000 get added to that pool, and then a pool then picks like 500 of the 1,000 and allows them through to register. And then you have to re-click on register to enter the next pool to then be entered into the next chance to be taken from that pool to actually registering for the tournament. That's my understanding of it. So it basically like takes you in a wave, and that wave gets through, and then only some of that wave actually gets into register, and then everyone else has to go back and click on register again with everyone else who's clicking on register at that time. And basically it like theoretically makes it a little bit more fair in terms of like, people with the fastest internet don't just aren't guaranteed spots over other people. It is still effectively first come first serve for the most part. Like if you show up 10 minutes late, you're not getting into the tournament at that point, right?
mhm.
But if you show up like 5 seconds later than someone else, you might have the exact same chance as someone who literally showed up like on the dot, like immediately at 7 p.m. or whenever registration went live. You might have like the same chance as them. And that's my understanding of how the system works. So I don't really think that's that much bigger of a deal or worse than, or that much better or worse than first come, first serve. It's basically negligible, right? It's basically just kind of the same thing for the most part. So I don't really think there's too much of a gripe to have with that. I did see some people um, who weren't able to register for Lil being frustrated, and they're like specifically calling out Arcanine Lab system. But like, I don't know if that was going to really help you if the system was literally first come first serve. I think people are just looking for something to complain about, and that in that regard. So I don't know if the
Yeah.
system really is that big of a deal for this. I don't think
Regardless
this is
of
something to
what
complain
this
about.
regardless of what system is in place, like, people who miss out are gonna be annoyed, upset, right?
Yeah.
And it's reasonable
Yeah.
to be annoyed and upset, and they're gonna look for a place to, like, voice that frustration. It just kind of so happens that it's aimed at the Arcanine people right now. They're good people and, they love the game and they want I'm sure they would love to, fully allocate the spots to everyone who wants one, but it's not like, ultimately up to them. They're just kind of charged with, we've got this many spots, this many people, figure out
How
a
do we
way to
make
make it
it?
work,
Yeah.
right?
How do we get the people into the tournament? Which seems most reasonably most fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this all. I mean, so like it all just comes back to like tournament organizers or pretend. Dude, this was like actually ridiculous. Kind of blew my mind that this was the response. I saw. I forget who it was. Might have been Zapdos TCG. No, no, no. It was Cremasoli.
Hmm.
Alessandro
I
tweeted.
Caterpie.
Yeah, that he spoke to someone at TPCI at Worlds. It's like, yo, what is going on with these European events? Is it going to be better next season? Basically. And they were like, oh, we didn't even know this was a problem. No one submitted a support ticket. And I was like, there is no way that
Yeah,
they
we talked about
can't.
this a little last week.
Oh, did we really? Did we talk about this last week?
Well, we talked about how, like, the fact that submitting a support ticket is, like, the only way to
There's
get
no
them to hear
way.
anything.
Yeah,
You were
that's
saying, like,
absurd.
it should be someone's job to, like, monitor Pokemon TCG Twitter and, like, report what happens on, like, what people are upset about in the community.
Yeah, how is there not someone following people on Twitter to see that? Like literally, like one of the things we're going to talk about, or did we already talk about? Where are we at right now? Okay, we're going to talk about someone, Chris Brown, works at TPCI, literally follows
Yeah.
me on Twitter. I complain about stuff all the time, stuff like this. Like the fact that the only way apparently they can be communicated to through a support ticket is BS. That is just not true. There's definitely enough information being spread out on Twitter, complaints and problems. And if there's not, there's no way that the tournament organizers from Europe aren't like reporting this back to TPCI and being like, "Hey, our tournament's filled up really fast this year, and that's it." There's no way they don't give a report back on like how their season went or something like that, or being like, "What do you want us to do moving forward? Is there something you're expecting from us?" Or like anything like that. That just blew my mind that Alessandro had that conversation, and their response was, "Someone didn't. No one submitted a support ticket saying that European events were filling up super fast, so we can't do anything about it. Like we didn't know about it." That's just like that just blows my mind. Like, so that's just absurd that that's the response that Alessandro got. But yeah, the I think it is fair to be really frustrated and be complaining as European players because we don't see any growth or change from last season to this season. Now, if last season it was taking like a week for tournament registrations to fill out, and then this season new regional prize pool, a lot more incentive for people to want to play the game. All of a sudden, these tournaments were the ones that started capping in seconds out of nowhere, compared to last season. Then I don't think there's really that much reason to complain until we see what happens next season or with some of the later regionals down the line, right? But we are seeing this back-to-back seasons where Europe is kind of being screwed over,
Yeah.
and there's no push from the TOs to actually respond to the growth of the game, like we're seeing in North America specifically. And that will, if they keep this up next season, the season after over in Europe, that will kill the game over in those in Europe for sure. Like
Yeah.
it'll stunt the growth.
Kills
No one,
motivation for the players who,
yeah.
like,
If you go to your like you start playing the game and you go to your league cups and your league challenges, you have that experience maybe this season. Next season, you're like, okay, I want to go to some regional championships. You literally can't get into any of them. You're like, bro, why
mhm.
am I even playing Pokemon? So I play the league cups, I play the league challenges, but I want to go to some regionals. I literally can't get to these regionals because they just fill up instantly every single time. I'm gonna go play One Piece, right? Like, so it's maybe not gonna have the biggest detriment this season, but if it continues into next season, the season after, it will definitely start to kill the game over in Europe. So something needs to change next season.
Going to play One Piece is not a better solution, by the way, if you're worried about trying to get into tournaments because they have the same issue. It's
Yeah, well,
like,
maybe not even next season, but later this season, right?
yeah, sure.
Later this season in Europe, it would be nice to see things change for them. I
And I
mean,
think that could
One Piece has
happen.
the
That kind of is what
excuse.
happened to us, right? We had start of last season, stuff was capping, selling out really quick, but then by the spring of 2023, winter 2023, like, stuff looked
Yeah,
a lot better, like
yeah.
early
And
parts of
this
the year.
season, things have been great for North America so
Yep.
far, right?
Yep.
We had the only thing was Pittsburgh capped really, really fast, but even then they opened up a ton of slots, didn't
Yep.
cap. All the regionals past that haven't capped. Like the closest one was Peoria. I think it took 4 hours to cap. So like I think you might still be able to register for Sacramento if you want to, like right now. So yeah. We should see more of that over in Europe for sure. And Latin America at this point as well. One Piece does have the excuse that this is their first season though, right? Like so that's
Mhm.
fine. Like if they maybe didn't know what to expect, didn't know what they were getting into as much. And so, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, if this was the first time Europe was having these capping problems, you can't be too mad at TPCI or the tournament organizers to be like, well, we're showing them the game is growing. Hopefully it gets better next season. But now it's been like, hopefully it gets better next season, and it hasn't. That's when it's okay to be frustrated and mad, I think.
I can register for Peoria right now,
Oh, really?
but I
Well,
cannot register
that
for
might be like
Sacramento.
pure. Oh, okay, that might be one of this that you maybe just found a slot that like someone just randomly is like a random open slot for Peoria chip. So whoever is listening to this right now, if you are still trying to register for Peoria, there might be one slot open. I thought Peoria capped, like after like 4 hours or so. Maybe they open more slots. I don't
They
know,
may have
but
opened more slots, and that's
there might
something
just
else that's
be
been good
one
is a
slot
lot of
open.
organizers have gone in. It does feel like organizers are kind of doing what like. I don't know
They
how
can, yeah.
exactly this relationship works between organizers and TPCI. Is it like TPCI says, okay, you need to make space for this many people and make this work, or do organizers say, okay, we think that there will be this many people? Like I don't know exactly what the setup is, but like for example, registration for uh Gd- Gdansk. I don't know how you say this. This city in
Verdansk,
Poland.
Verdansk,
It's not
war.
Verdansk.
Got a war zone
Gdansk.
tournament.
It's basically the same thing. The organizer did tweet out, the list of available spots. 788 masters for TCG, 220 juniors and seniors, and then they tweeted their VG and Go numbers as well. And then just a few hours later, literally, or no, I guess like, yeah, a day later, a few hours later, whatever it is, um, we're able to make 150 more spots almost, right?
Well,
So like,
this is because I retweeted their initial post. That's why they made the more. No, I'm
yeah,
joking. I'm joking.
you made the difference, Azul. Are
Hey,
you going
maybe
to
I
regionals in Verdansk?
no, I didn't have any plans to, bro. But if Europe, if you want me to keep retweeting or commenting on the European tournament organizers' posts, I will if it gets more spots. No, I probably had no influence on it. I'm joking for that. But yeah, I think like that number could definitely be up towards. I mean, it could fit. I think we could see 1,200, 1,300, maybe even 1,400 Europeans at this tournament. I think like they're pushing up to 900, which is nice. More slots going in there, of course, which is great to see. But I think we definitely these European tournaments could probably all have like over 1,000 players.
Yeah, I think easily for sure.
Yeah, and the 900 there is also like juniors and seniors as well. It's not just masters. So that's into it a little bit.
All right. No, the 900 is just masters. Juniors
Oh,
and
is
seniors
it?
are still 220. Yeah, yeah. It
Oh,
was like
okay.
separate on
Wait.
their post. Yep.
All right, bring it back up.
You don't believe me?
Well, no, now I just want to see the breakdown. Now I'm like curious.
Yeah,
Like,
so it's
I thought it was like
220.
that's VG. Oh, oh,
Dude,
you're right. You're
like,
right. You're right.
what are you looking at?
Is there no divisions in Go? It's just
No, there's no
Go.
divisions in Go.
See, why do they do that with Go but not TCG or VGC? What?
Dude,
Why?
I
Why?
don't know,
Well, no, no.
man.
But like, so actually, I had
I
the
think you have to be
discussion.
13 to play Go even.
Oh, can you not?
I'm not
You have to be over
100% sure on
13.
that though. I'm not 100% sure.
All right, someone can probably confirm in the comments. How old do you have to be to play in a Pokemon Go regional championships? That might be maybe that's the reason. It's like there's no reason to have divisions if you have to be 13 or over.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, with all that being said, Azul, before we get to guess that flavor text, we do need to take a moment to give a shout out and thank you to our amazing sponsor, Dragon Shield, for supporting us here at the Uncommon Energy Podcast. Of course, Dragon Shield makes some of the best card gaming and tabletop gaming products and accessories on the market, including sleeves, binders, deck boxes, and so much more. Azul, we're a couple weeks away. You got any new colors that you got your eye on? You going with the blood reds? what do
No.
what do we think heading
They
into
sent me
Peoria?
I showed them off last week. They sent me the Truth and Justice one. I think I'm gonna bring those. I'm gonna use the Truth and
Ooh,
I'm gonna
going with
bring
the
those
dual
with me to
matte
Peoria.
color?
Yeah, rocking the dual mats. I generally prefer the mats, but the dual mats are my secondary go-to, of course.
Yeah.
So I'll probably rock on those at Peoria. But yeah, huge shout out to Dragon Shield as always for sponsoring the podcast. You can check them out at dragonshield.com/webshop/US or EU, depending on where you're located. And of course, they're literally available everywhere else, local game stores, Amazon, Walmart, you name it, they'll probably be there.
And with that being said, it is time for Guess That Flavor Text, where each week either Azul or I picks a card for the other host to try to guess what that card is based solely on the flavor text featured on that card. You do get some lifelines to work with as well. The The lifelines are what set the card is, what set the card is from, excuse me, what stage the card is, and then read an attack name. It is my turn this week to pick for Azul. I'm absolutely crushing Azul. I think I'm ahead by like 5 points or something like that. So, you know what, Azul? I was feeling generous here. I've got one. I said this a couple weeks ago, and then you
You
like
keep
had no
saying this.
clue.
Yeah, you literally keep
Azul,
saying this.
you can definitely get this one. Okay. I totally believe in you. You can do it. Are you ready?
I'm ready, Chip. Hit me with the this week's flavor
All
text.
right. Like, I'm not going to just give you a freebie, right? I
Yeah,
got to
okay,
make you
alright,
work
yeah.
for it, but you can
Every time you
totally
think
get
you're making
this.
me work for it, I never get it either.
All right. For protection, it releases a horrible stench from the antennae on its head to drive away enemies.
Okay, that is a lot of information. So go ahead one more time.
For protection, it releases a horrible stench from the antennae on its head to drive away enemies.
Okay, so it has antennas on its head. So it's a bug Pokemon, almost for sure. And then it's also poison type or something like that, probably. So it could be psychic or a grass Pokemon. I mean, that might help me a little bit to try and get there. We got to use some lifelines here, though, for sure. I'm thinking, I don't know. I'm thinking of Butterfree, but is Butterfree like out here farting on people? I don't think so. So I think we're gonna have to go. I think we're gonna have to go with. Let's go with the set. I feel like the set usually helps me more than I actually think it does. But I think it. Yeah. What set is the card from?
This one might not help you. It is from
Oh no.
XY Flashfire.
XY Flash Fire Pyroar. That's all I remember. Wait, that's where Pyroar came from, right?
Lysander.
Lysander, Pyroar. There was maybe a Butterfree in that set. There could have been something like a Venomoth. Maybe like the ladybug Pokemon. Those things have antennae on their heads, I think, as well. Like Lady Bee or I forget that. I don't even know the names of them now that I'm trying to think of them. All right, give
Ladybug
me Ladybug. Yeah, Ladybug. And I forget
and
what the other one
Lady
is.
M.
Lady in. So it could be one of those, but let's go with what stage the card is
It is
next.
a basic.
All right. I don't think it's Ladybug or Lady in. So not no there's no chance for I don't think it was Venomoth or Butterfree anyways, but there's no chance for it to be one of those. I don't think the attack name is gonna help me much, but it might help me determine if it's like a psychic Pokemon, which might help me visually, or a grass Pokemon. So I guess I'm gonna go with an attack name here as well. Use them all.
It is Bug Bite.
Oh, it is a bug. I feel like Bug Bite is usually not on psychic Pokemon like that I can remember. Majority of the time, it is going to be on a grass Pokemon. Dude, I am struggling here. So XY Flash Fire. What is the basic for Venomoth? Even know it's Cascoon, something Cascoon, Venomoth. Could be that. XY
Venomoth
Flash
is a
Fire is
stage
old.
one, by the way.
Venomoth is?
Yeah.
What am I thinking
Cascoon
of
is
then?
the middle evolution for Beautifly.
Oh, beautiful. What
Or
does Venomoth
Dustox.
evolve from?
Dustox. But
What
Venomoth
about
evolves
the
from Venonat.
Oh, that's what I'm is that it could be Venonat. If you would you have really just told me Venonat if it was Venonat? I don't even know if you would have done that. But I guess that doesn't like now I'm like talking myself out of it. So maybe. All right,
Listen,
let's
I
go with
decided whenever because you just don't know Pokemon's names, I
yeah,
decided
yeah,
like
yeah.
when you're having a hard time thinking of what the Pokemon's name is, I'll tell you what the Pokemon's name is, regardless of if it's close or
Let's go
not.
with Venonat. I'm pretty sure Venonat has antennae. Let's go with Venonat. It's an older Pokemon.
Locking it in.
Sure.
Not a bad guess, but not correct. What was one of the other Pokemon you were saying a few times that was not a basic?
Butterfree,
Yeah, what are the previous evolutions for Butterfree?
Weedle, Caterpie.
It is Caterpie.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, I just like was jumping on like what are the basics of them. Venonat was the first one that I thought of. Caterpie
You
is
were
out
so
here.
close, man.
Yeah. And all right. Well, I mean, but the process is working though, right? The process I went through definitely getting me closer than I have in the past. So
Yep.
yeah, that's something right
How did
there,
you
right?
remember there was a Butterfree and Flashfire?
A Butterfree and Flashfire. I mean, it's just like it's an older bug type Pokemon, right? I know like a rough. I have a rough idea of generations, in general.
Bro, this one's
Um,
from '99.
what?
Butterfree.
Well, yeah, but I know it's, like, not one of the newer bug Pokemon,
Yeah,
basically.
okay.
I know it could have been, like, a Butterfree. That's what I'm
Also,
saying,
this
like,
Caterpie and Metapod have, like, the quick evolve abilities that, like, these, like, were not
evolve
good by any
instantly.
means at any point, but, like, these things had popped up at some point or another, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Yeesh. Ooh, that
Azul,
close.
you'll have to try again in 2 weeks.
Alright. Hopefully, you don't get too much further ahead next week. Our last topic, last thing we got on is the docket, a term, right? Last thing we
I
have
thought
on
you
the
were gonna say
docket.
the menu.
No, we could go with the menu.
The
The last thing we got on the
docket is a
menu,
term, though.
yeah.
That works.
Talking a little bit more about the current format, tournament format of how you play best of one, best of three. What is better? What is not? And this discussion kind of got brought up again this week because Chris Brown, who I mentioned earlier, put out a tweet. And Chris Brown, was it? What does it say in their Twitter bio? Director, global esports, and events producer at Pokemon. Go ahead and read them the tweet, Chip.
Yeah, so Chris tweeted out, visited Japan Champion League last year. The TCG tournament format is Swiss best of one, 30-minute round timer, no extra turns. Unfinished games equal a loss for both players. No extra turns post time means that the next round starts about 10 minutes after time is called for the previous. Thoughts? So, just putting feelers out there, wants to see what people think about Japan's tournament structure versus our current one. And of course, this is a topic that has been ongoing for the last several months in the game. It feels like this time discussion came up pre NAIC. It feels like because we just got a couple decks in the format right now that are really slow that take a long time to establish their board. They use a lot of one prize Pokemon. Lost
A lot of
Box and
actions.
Gardevoir are being those two decks in the format right now. And there's also, been tons of discussion around how players abuse the current time rules in tournament play. We play 50 minutes, best of
Jeez.
three, and
30-minute best
if
of three.
yeah, 30
You
minutes best of three.
imagine?
You know, 50 minutes best of three. And if game two does not complete within that 50 minutes plus three turns, then whoever won game number one is the winner of the set. So it doesn't matter how close to winning or losing game number two anyone is. If time is called and the game does not finish in plus three turns, then that set ends in a win for the person who won game number one. So, I mean, this is kind of cool, right? It shows that, someone at Pokemon, Chris, being a director of global esports, like that's pretty high up there. Chris is in the Pokemon Presents a lot of the time, talking about things that are happening in the play Pokemon world. The fact that he's tweeting this out there, putting feelers out there, wants to know what people are thinking. I mean, it tells me that, it feels like at least that Pokemon is at least considering adjusting what we have right now, right? Is that too far to assume that based on this?
Um, yeah, I guess this might kind of indicate that, to be honest, for sure. Or maybe it's just kind of just like Chris just wants to know what people think more so than anything. Um, that's what I was saying. Like, if Chris is putting this out there, that means Chris is paying attention to people talking on Twitter and like
Mhm.
sees the discourse. That means like I don't know why Pokemon needs to get a support ticket to know that European events are capping instantly on registration. Um, but yeah, it's cool to see that a little bit more like communication or thought being put out there from a little bit more of a direct connection, I guess, as far as thoughts being put out there from people at TPCI and stuff like that. Um, as far as their system goes, I still think best of one is not good. I think the current meta is kind of the product of the current meta is that I think it's so I've having put more thought into this. I think it's fine for decks to exist in a best two out of three for tournament format that generally play one game. I think that's fine. I think it's a whole different discussion about how time can be manipulated around them. But I think if, like, just generally Lost Box plays one game or Guardy plays one game in a best out of three, I think that's fine for decks like that to exist in the meta. I think the problem could become when the majority of top decks are those type of decks. Then I think it's okay to be like, okay, maybe if this is the direction the game is consistently going in, then maybe we should switch to a best of one format. But I don't think we've really had that indication yet. It's really just Lost Box and Guardy, and Lost Box and Guardy. Well, Lost Box specifically has been around for a long time. Guardy a little bit more recently, but I don't think we should be like all doom and gloom on only playing one game in a best two out of three format till the end of time, we should wait and see how the meta develops and how the game develops in general. And if it is consistently that a majority of the top decks or enough of the top decks are one game best 2 out of 3 are playing one game in best out of 3 and getting wins that way, then I think a shift is probably necessary. But I don't think that's really been um, kind of like we don't know that yet. We don't know where the game is headed as far as that goes. We have to like wait a rotation, maybe even 2 rotations before we really lose Lost Box, lose Gardevoir completely. Or maybe just Lost Box is going to be the main call, but Gardevoir's going to be around for a little bit longer. So once we Lost Box gets a little bit more under control, whether that be it being countered by Jirachi and Iron Hands, or maybe it's just falling out of the favor in the meta, or the rotation losing Battle VIP passes enough to kind of kill it off. Once Lost Box is gone, what does it look like then? Is it just Gardevoir being the only deck that is playing one game in best 2 out of 3? And if it is, then I think it's fine. I think it's fine for decks like that to exist. And I think this is definitely a situation where it's like the grass is always greener, because we even see like Daichi basically responding to Chris Brown's tweet and being like, and this is actually what I've seen a couple tweets from a couple other people being like, the Japanese players love playing in TPCI's event format. They love playing best out of 3 over best of 1. So for everyone outside of Japan, I think this is definitely a grass is always greener kind of situation. It doesn't mean it couldn't be improved on though. The best of 3 system currently could be improved on for sure.
Yeah, and some people definitely, I mean, like Mahone here tweeted, best of one Swiss would be fantastic. Like some people are definitely, taking the blue pill or whatever, right? Like saying that they feel like it would be better the other way. But, it was echoed by a lot of people. I mean, some people like Team Fish Knuckles here saying he personally would like it. We could play more rounds, like 13 to 15, and still finish earlier in the day. Like, I feel like if you moved to a best of one format, it
You'd have to play more
probably
rounds.
should add more rounds, right? Like doing what Japan has right now, which is 9 rounds, best of one. I think like you can find a happy medium between that and then our 9 rounds, best of three, by having like day one 12 or 15 rounds, something like that, of best of one. And then that would maybe help with some of the variance heading into day two. If it's 12 rounds of best of one, what you would take people who have a record of 9-3 or better, right? Into day two, maybe 8-4 into day two, something like that.
Yeah. I think well, I want to say something as well. Oh yeah, I think best of 3 is better, yada yada. Dan, I had somewhere I was gonna go with this. What were you saying?
I was just talking about like what some people had said, people who've played in both, like Jake Gearhart pointing out the vast
Oh
majority of
yeah.
players who have experienced TPCI system and TPC system say they prefer TPCIs. You
Yeah,
mentioned that as
exactly.
well.
Yeah, TB like best 2 out of 3 is like so much better to, and like it's not all about the better player winning as much as possible, because then we'd be looking at playing best of fives, best of sevens, yada yada yada, right? But if even if you aren't one of the best players in the world, you want to feel like what you do in a game of Pokemon is winning you more games of Pokemon, right? You want to be winning more often based on your skill, right? Like everyone does, even if you don't like
Yeah.
mentally realize it, everyone does. And best 2 out of 3 leads to the better player winning a lot more than best of 1 does. I think there could be some things to be improved on in best 2 out of 3. Like one thought that I had right now would be like if you're in game two. Now in the past we've had rules where also, what I want to say is we should not be flip flopping between best of 1 and best 2 out of 3 every other year, right? That should not be something we do. We should figure out what is best for how the game is probably going to be played over the next 10 years, and then go with that, right? And currently I think best 2 out of 3, even in the current format, is superior to best of 1 for sure. Now if there is like a trend of there's too many decks that play one game in best 2 out of 3, then I think we could talk again, like a year or two from now if that is happening. But right now, I think best 2 out of 3. I don't think it's even really a discussion to have personally. But I could see little things being added to best 2 out of 3 to more incentivize playing more games. Like in the past, we used to have a rule where if half the prize cards, or if one player has drawn more than half of their prize cards, the game counts. So if you
Yeah.
drew 4 prize cards, the game counted, and then whoever's ahead on prize cards wins at that point. So if your opponent won game one, but then you drew 4 prize cards in game two, you win game two, right? And it ends with you being up by 4, or you've drawn 4 prize cards and they have 4 prize cards left, and you have 2 prize cards left, you win that game, and then you go to game 3 sudden death, right? Or whatever that
Yeah.
was. Or maybe at
But
that point it would
see,
be a tie.
then you get
Um,
into the issue. That's what happened in 2015 Nationals finals, right? Jason
yeah,
Klaczynski loses game one to the Wailord. He would have lost game two, but time was called and he
drew
had
4
taken
prizes.
at least 4 prizes. So then they went to a sudden death, 1 prize, game three, deciding game. He ends Enrique to 1 and just quaking punches for the win.
Yeah, I think in this situation you'd remove sudden death and it would be a tie unless it was in top cut. But in top cut you have 75 minutes. If you're not finishing 3 games, It's your fault or your opponent's fault. They should have played faster. We can't give nuanced rules for every little situation when someone could have played better, right? So you got to like limit it. It does maybe hurt deck creativity a little bit in that sense, like you pointed out with that situation. I'm sure Sander would not be a big fan of those rules, but yeah, you can't give nuanced rules for every single situation. You have to kind of do like more broad rules that make sense for the majority of what people are going to be playing more consistently in the majority of
And
situations
then
that are going to
apply nuance
arise.
when it makes sense.
Yeah, and then I think actually a rule that I just literally came up with in my head would be we could have that rule apply only for game 2 and be like and not have it apply for game 3. So just be like, if when time is called, you are in game 2 and X amount of prize cards are drawn, or you could even just make it who's ever up on prize cards wins game 2, right? Or if at least 4 prize cards have been drawn on one side or the other, the person who is ahead on prize cards wins game 2, right? I think that would actually be a a fine rule to have. Would just have that apply to game 2. And if you're in game 3, and even if you draw 4 prize cards, it's still a tie at that point. But
Yeah.
game 1, conclude game 1. If you're in game 2, if at least one person's drawn 4 prize cards, that game all of a sudden counts where it is, and then you just never go to game 3. It's just a tie at that point. But you get the game 2 to count more frequently.
I feel like this would fix, some of the issues that players are having right now. I mean, one of the big matches that I feel like people have pointed to that like it shows that this is kind of an issue in our system right now was I think it was round 1 of NAIC this year. It was
Yep.
Pedro Pertusi versus Tord, where Tord wins a pretty long game number 1. It's a Gardevoir mirror match. And then in game 2, Tord basically I mean, I don't know at what point he made this decision, but like as early as turn 2, you can very much tell that Tord does not intend to attack that game. He just intends to put Pokemon in play, play his cards, do things that are allowed within the context of the rules as they exist currently, and then finish his turn. Pedro does his thing, attacks, takes a knockout. There's just not enough time on the clock for Pedro to ever take all 6 prize cards. But would there have been time for Pedro to take 4 prize cards?
Yeah.
Probably, right? And so then
Yeah.
Tord has to, would have to play differently.
It totally have to play the game or just
Yeah.
tie, right? So you
And
play
that
for
was
the
one
win
of
at
the,
that
that's one of the
point.
things too is it's like when you get to that point in a game, it doesn't feel like you are playing Pokemon anymore. You're not playing to like play a game of Pokemon. You're playing the rules of the tournament, which is
Yeah.
like at the top level, you know what? That is what it is, right? The rules are what they are. What is being done right now by some of these top players is within the confines of what is laid out in the rules for the most part. Penalties are probably not given out as frequently as they should be for pace of play things. That's a whole other issue in and of itself. But um, you know, the rules as they are written allow for what we see taking place right now, right? But I
Yeah,
don't know that there's
definitely.
any way that you could ever change it, right? Because like
I don't know. I like
you can't tell someone you're not allowed to, play cards. You're not allowed to think about what card you should play next for a second or two, Like
Yeah,
you
I think
can't
it's
tell
like
someone that.
yeah, of course. I think it is a little bit ridiculous that people are like getting mad at Tord. Like I have nothing against Tord. I'm gonna bring up this thing in the rule book here in a second, but people
Yeah,
are
I
getting
can bring it
mad
up.
at Tord for like not taking knockouts and like not evolving to a guard EX. It's like, I mean, that's just like ridiculous. Now, I think from the 2 stream matches we've seen recently from Tord, one was up against
Tell me what section of the
um
rule book it's in real quick and I'll pull it up.
just tempo of play.
There's numbers there.
Oh, 5.8.5.
Okay, thanks.
What Tord did against Pedro Petrucci, and what Tord did against Alberto, I believe, at Barcelona, I think would fall. I think, like in both those situations, I think it would have been fair if Tord had got a warning, or if Tord already had a warning, could have ended up with a 2 prize penalty. And I think what Tord could be penalized here for falls under this, like, I don't know, what is this? What would you call this in the rule book? A rule, but it's like a
This
caveat, like
clause.
a clause. Go ahead and read the clause.
Yeah, so this is like Azul said, 5.8.5 in the rules and resource book. Tempo of play. The pace of a Pokemon TCG match should be lively without being excessively fast, and each player should receive approximately half of the allotted time for the game. Look,
I will say, I think that being specified is a little cringe. Like some decks just take more time. Also, like sometimes you're playing a control deck that like you're playing 30 minutes and your opponent's playing 20. Like that, I
yeah,
don't
I
think
mean, it
that
does
should
say
exist in the rule.
approximately, it's
Yeah.
like not a hard rule. But I
Like,
mean,
bro, if
and
I
I
got
feel like, you know, when you think about like, I don't know, just any mirror match playing out, you would hope that both
yeah, yeah, of
games,
course.
in an ideal world of like competitive a
Like,
game, right?
this
Like,
isn't chess. Like,
I
some
know.
decks take 2 actions and some decks take 10 actions, and that's fine. Like, it's fine for there's
It's fine
variety
for there to
in
be the
Pokemon.
Arceus Duraludons that go attach attack, and then it's fine for there to be the Muse that Ultra Ball and Fusion Strike system, and then
Yeah.
Cramomatic, and then Play a Stadium, and then
So,
Alessa Sparkle, and
I Yeah, I just don't like that is specified in the rule book. I think that's wrong for it to be specified in a trading card game rule book for that to say that roughly half the time should be allowed to both players. When at that point, we're not playing chess. Like, we don't play with the same pieces that do the same things, where we have the same options of what our pieces do every single turn. Like, some decks take more actions, some decks take less. Now, the only thing that should happen is the time between actions and how fast you are actually playing the game for how many actions you have. That's what should be put under scrutiny and
yeah,
should be regulated, right?
sure.
So I just wanted to point that out there. I'm not a big fan of that. This exists in the rule book as a sentence, but go ahead, continue.
Pokemon Organized Play has set forth the below guidelines by which to assess whether a game action is completed in a reasonable time frame. Shuffling and setup, game start for 2 minutes.
Oh, nice.
Shuffling and deck search mid game, 15 seconds. Performing the actions of a card or attack, 15 seconds. Considering the game position before playing a card, 10 seconds. And starting the turn after the opponent's end of turn announcement, 5 seconds. So, I mean, some of these things, and I think that maybe some of the reason that some of this isn't as judged, like isn't as penalized maybe as much as it should have been, is because maybe judges are applying more nuance than we would give them credit for, right? Like, for example, this last one, starting the turn after the opponent's end of turn announcement, 5 seconds. So someone takes a knockout, you have to promote something. Are you not able to, like, take a moment, look at their discard pile, and try to figure out what is best for me to promote here in this situation? Like, if sometimes it's obvious, right? Sometimes you have a Pidgeot EX in play that has free retreat, so you're sending that up, right? But, like, sometimes what you promote based on, how many resources you've gone through, how many switch cards you have left in your Lost Box deck, right? Like, it could matter. Maybe you send up your attacker, maybe you send up a Comfey.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, but like that's one of the things you should be constantly like. I mean, you shouldn't take too much time, but yeah, like if you haven't checked your
Yeah, yeah,
opponent's
yeah.
discard pile in a while, pick it up. But that's why this is like, and then even the next sentence is these are guidelines only and should only be considered within the context of normal gameplay. So like one of the examples I like to give for this, which as far as to my knowledge is very legal. And when I've ever talked to judges about this kind of stuff before, they're like, yeah, that's fine. Like you can sit there at the beginning of your turn and like take 30 seconds, 45 seconds to look at your hand, assess the board state, and then play out like 10 actions in a row, like taking 2 seconds each. Like that's fine. Cause you're like, it's just like it's like on average, you want like your time between actions to be like 10 to 15 seconds. So if you take like 30 seconds initially to plan everything out and then play everything really quickly, like that's fine, right? Um, so it's not something where you like have to play like you have to be like, okay, I only have 10 seconds before I have to make my next move, right? Like you can take that extra time to like assess the board state, choose what you want to ultra ball away, what you want to get off
So in
your
that
ultra ball, and so on.
situation, if a player takes, 45 seconds to plan out their turn,
5 seconds might be a little bit long, but like
okay, if
maybe
they
20,
take
30.
30, if they take an extended period of time, more than what is outlined here, by a bit to think about their turn, and then they play a couple cards really fast, but then something happens and they like have to think about something for a second, should they then be penalized? Because, well, they've already used some of this allotted time earlier. We're supposed to be moving quickly now. Oh, but something maybe changed. Now you want to think about it. Should there be a penalty enforced right away? Right?
I don't know. I mean, I have to bet on the situation and like it, like, and that's why like usually a judge just like looking at someone playing for like a minute or something isn't going to be able to really truly assess should someone get a penalty for like stopping for a second in the middle of their flow of actions, right? A judge will want to sit there for a little while and actually assess the situation a little bit longer than that. Are they like consistently taking too much time versus like one time they stopped and took a little bit of extra time than normally is like on average what people generally take, right? So that should be like a consistent pattern where you'd want to all of a sudden like give a penalty, I think. So it can be it can be really hard to tell sometimes. But in general, just make sure you're playing at a reasonable pace of play. Now the part that here at the end is kind of the caveat or whatever I mentioned. What'd you call it? Would you say is a Your word was better than mine. I'm saying caveat. I don't know if that's the right word to use this
I
word.
think what
Um,
dude, I don't remember. I
and
said
this I
menu
think,
earlier in this episode. It doesn't mean that.
yeah, and this I think could be what Tord could be penalized for. Players attempting to compartmentalize their turn in order to consistently use every second of the time allowed for these actions will be subject to penalties associated with stalling. So basically, this means if performing the actions of a card or attack 15 seconds, if you play a level ball and then count to 15 while you do that, and then play another card and count to 50 while you do that. If you're literally truly maximizing how much time you're allotted between actions, that's considered stalling or slow playing. And the first penalty you'll get will be a warning. And if you already have a warning for slow play, not just in that game, but in the tournament in general, it will be followed up by a two prize penalty. And I don't know where it goes from there. At the very least, it would be a followed up two prize penalty. Um, and so I think like already people are saying you can't be mad at Tor because he's playing by the rule book. And like I said, I got nothing against Tord, but I think under the current rule book, Tord probably should already be getting some penalties, warnings, and even leading up to DPLs, depending if he already has a warning. So I think
Also,
what
we
Tord
don't
is
1,000% know whether or not he is getting penalties, right? In the Swiss rounds out there, maybe it's just not getting penalized on the stream, right? He's not on stream every
that's
single
possible. Yeah,
tournament. He didn't get
I feel
streamed at all in Pittsburgh, right?
I will say with that, I usually do hear if Tord ever receives a penalty at it or a warning at a tournament. It usually makes its way over to me, so I usually know whether or not he got a
Yeah,
warning or a
sure.
penalty. It gets spread around. Tord, of course, is like the biggest name in the game, so a lot of people know what's happening, what he's playing by round one, and all that kind of stuff, right? So, um, but yeah, I think like I said, I like Vader viewed towards match in Barcelona, the round one or the round against Alberto, round one of day two. Grant Manley was with me there as well. We watched and kind of talked about it. And I think it would have been fine if Torta got a warning in that situation. I was like, it kind of feels like it is compartmentalizing the turn to try and maximize time. And it felt like that. And you can't truly know for sure if that's what Torta's trying to do or not. But also, I mean, that's where the nuance comes in, where judges are allowed to make those calls based on what they think is happening in the situation. And you can be like, well, maybe there should just be like strict rules and you should only ever follow the rules. But if you do that, it's really easy for players to like bend and break the rules or effectively bend and break the rules kind of at their will, knowing that they can literally count to 15 in their head before they have to make another action, right? So I don't think you want it to go that route. Like, we want to give more power to the judges to make nuanced calls in these situations because I think that'll definitely lead to a better, more fair playing field for everyone.
One of the things I did see brought up, and I've seen this a couple times, and I think we talked about it. I think the first person I saw bring this up was Jake Gearhart a few months ago. Tord said something about it. And then in the replies to Chris Brown's tweet, Rahul suggested it potentially. And that is moving to a best of two system, where each players play one game, each person gets a chance to go first, and then you just like, count your match points for each game, like one match point for each win, right? Something like that. I think that's similar to what chess does, right? Because playing black versus white is so different in chess.
Yeah.
So, each player gets a chance to have the first turn and then you report your score accordingly. I don't think this really works as well in Pokemon though. I can like understand the thought process behind why someone would want this to potentially be a thing, but I mean, I'm also thinking from, and I think I said this when we talked about this a few weeks ago on the podcast, was like from a stream standpoint, from a content standpoint, like putting a matchup there, if we stream, if we don't stream all 9 rounds day 1, but we stream, 5 rounds or 6 rounds, whatever it is, and then like 4 or 5 of those 5 or 6 rounds end in just a tie, like a 1-1, that's so not interesting to
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah, and I think that can be a good enough reason to not do it. I actually was talking to Chip about League of Legends when the EU LCS switched over from a best of one format to a best of two format, and I just stopped watching because it was just like it was like I no one wins. Like, I don't want to watch where the game is it's like it's either over after the first game because they're going to win 2-0, or the other team wins and then it's a tie. So no matter what, it's not a fun outcome, right? Like best of one, I feel like is more fulfilling at that point because there's a winner, right? Somebody wins, right? So I think just based on that premise of like there's just no gratification from like completing a series or as much, and then especially on like the stream side of things, like there's no winner. It's like way less enjoyable to watch. Like I literally stopped. I used to watch a lot of NALCS, EULCS. I just stopped watching the EULCS when they went from best of one to best of two. Not everyone will, but I think a majority of people will agree that it's definitely less fulfilling to watch a match where there's either you already know the winner after game one, because if they win the second game, they are the winner, or it just ends in a tie, right? There's like no potential for a comeback, right? Which just makes it super, I don't know, deflating. It's just not enjoyable to watch like at all. So yeah, best of two I think is just awful. I think me and Chip both agree on that. Best of two is not the answer. The more I'm thinking about it, the more I like my solution. Where in game two, if someone's drawn 4 prize cards, the game counts. I think I did it. I solved it. So just implement it. Chris Brown, I hope you're listening to this. If not, I hope this gets back to you. Second game, if someone's drawn 4 prize cards, the game counts. Lock it up, submit it. Next region. We can get this done before Peoria. We could have this implemented before Peoria. Let's do it. I think I did it. Let's get it.
I think
Now we're
you
talking.
overestimate how quickly something like that could. I don't know. They could
All
probably
right, I'll
get it
give him
done
a
if they
season.
wanted
Next
to.
season, no, maybe after the first IC, like that would be a good time frame.
I mean, to be fair, last year, um, when VGC came back for Scarlet and Violet, they had record numbers because people were interested in the game, right? So
It's actually crazy, like because I feel like VGC has always been really small, but like since Scarlet and Violet, it's really taken off, and like
yeah, well, it's
consistently like
interesting because
500
like
players and stuff like that.
competitive Pokemon, like video game, has always been really popular. But for a long time, the most popular way to play it was the unofficial like singles rule set, right? But now
Yeah,
I feel like we're getting to a point where VGC is just as popular, if not even more popular than what singles was for a long time. But
they
regardless,
might overtake the TCG eventually. To be honest, like
it
the
could
numbers
happen
are,
for sure.
yeah.
I mean, it's way larger reach as far as like audience and people who understand what's happening. And as long as the video game, every single generation, they've done things to make it easier to make a competitive team. Now, this year, there's been some issues, I think, with some of the like. I pay attention to a little bit of the VGC scene, but I think there's been some issues with like um getting some of the older Pokemon in your game, but like any Pokemon that's from Scarlet and Violet, you can have a pretty easy time, a pretty reasonable time getting a competitive team built within like 30 minutes in game, something like that. So it's like not too hard to do.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to this point, when they came back in January of this year, they were using their old rules that were made it really difficult to make it even into day two, and then even more difficult to make it to top eight. I don't remember exactly what the way everything worked, but they had a different system to us. But
Like less rounds and no ties or something, right? Wasn't?
yeah, yeah. I mean, and they still have no ties, but yeah, they had less rounds.
Oh
It
yeah,
was
the
just
ties
like
can't exist.
basically there was like a massive
Oh, they had no day
bubble.
two. They had
Yeah,
no
they
day
had no day
two.
two. That's what it was. It was
That's what it
only
was. Yeah.
straight. It was cut straight to top 16 maybe, but there was always like a 30 player
9
bubble or
rounds.
something
Yeah.
like that. They had no day two Swifts. That's what it was. And it happened like that for like the first two regionals. Their community was like pretty upset about it. They were pretty vocal about it. I don't know if anyone submitted support tickets or if they just paid attention to VGC Twitter or what it was. Someone at Pokemon paid attention. But it got fixed a couple regionals into the year and they implemented the day two Swiss system like what we have in TCG. Now, it was actually kind of funny to like sit back and watch them like complain about the same things, we have complained about for a while with the system of
Yeah.
like, oh, bubbling out, feels so bad, right? And like I bubbled getting this many championship points. I had the same record as this person. It's the same things like we've been complaining about. But it was still far better than what they had
Yeah.
previously, right? So there is precedent, all that to say, like there is precedent for like something like this changing in the middle of the season, which I think
Mm.
it wouldn't be unreasonable for them to make a change based on like how things are in the current metagame, but it is a question of like like you
Sh-
said, it shouldn't change year to year. It shouldn't change based on
Yeah.
the metagame. But is this more just a problem with where the metagame is at currently, where the pace of the current decks are, or is the pace of the current decks highlighting the issues of this current format, right? And if that's the
Yeah.
case, then it's reasonable for it to change, right?
Yeah. I honestly think like just adding some way to make more games finish in best of out of three is probably the way to go. Like, yeah, best of one is terrible. If they do force us to best of one, which I really hope they don't, I hope I donk every player's mana fees who wanted best of one. Like I hope every time I hit them in a tournament, they
Are
just
you just
open
gonna
loan
play
mana fee pass.
quad? Does quad Iron Valiant become a real
Oh,
strategy in best of one?
yep, yep. For me, I hope I just play against who was it? Mahone. I'm gonna have a list, bro. I hope I hit him and I donk their mana fees every single round, bro.
Azul's hit list.
They're
Azul's
opening mana
donk
fee pass
list.
every time. Um, yeah, I think I think there definitely is some improvement to be had on best out of three. Just like to improve on the system. I think best out of three is far superior to best of one. We see the Japanese players saying basically the same thing. It's like they would much rather play in our system in best out of three in the current meta than their system in best of one. Right now, I'm not saying their best of one system is perfect and couldn't be improved on, but how do you get better than 30-minute best of one? Like that's like maximizing best of ones, right? Like what else would you even improve on that? There's like nothing to do, right? Maybe you add ties in there, I guess. That would be like the one thing to see improved. But yeah, I think best of three, far superior. Do something just to make more games finish. Is it like I said, game two, 4 prize cards have been drawn. I don't like the idea of that existing in game three as well. But in game two, I kind of like the idea of it existing. I don't love the idea of it existing in game three. Just like make if you're in
A
game three
game
and doesn't
two
finish,
only rule.
yeah, like in my head, I like it better as just like a game two only rule. But I could see them doing it in the game three as well. But adding some kind of other way to make a game be finished or head if you want to do a head on prize cards, whatever it might be, adding something like that, I don't think is like a bad thing. I think simply being a head on prize card, I'm not a huge fan of that because if you're just like ahead by 1 prize card, 5 to 6, you winning the match feels a little. There's like no strategy. There's no strategizing that you could do to put yourself in a better position, like have to draw 4 prize cards, right, and be playing around.
Well,
Okay, I have a couple turns to work with. Instead, it's like, well, my
so
opponent drew 1 prize card, so
So for the stuff of like, being ahead on prize cards, that's like what the tiebreaker is in game three of single elimination, right? And I've had that situation come
yeah,
up in league cups before where we went to time in game three. It was like a Gardevoir GX mirror match. So this was like 2017, sometime 2018, something like that. Um and we go into time. I become turn three of time and I don't have a way to get ahead on prize cards, but I do have to change my thinking because of the time rules. I have a way to make sure on my opponent's next turn, turn four, they can't take, 1 prize card, like evolving everything up or something like that. Like something I wouldn't normally have done, right? I
yeah,
like had to do something I wouldn't normally have done. Do that. My opponent has no way to take that last knockout, whatever it is, and then I am able to do it on the last turn,
yeah.
to make sure that I go ahead on prize cards, even though maybe doing it in this way, I don't remember exactly what happened, right? But like, even though like I think that existing, like having to think differently, adjusted to the rules, isn't necessarily like a bad thing. Like, yeah, it's different than like what a normal game of Pokemon should look like,
Well,
but
yeah. Yeah, but you
like
could argue the
you
same
don't
thing
fault
for
you don't
the.
fault like a professional sports team for like changing the way they play based on whatever unique situation has come
I
up
mean, you
or
can just
like
use.
whatever happens in the rule book, right?
Well,
Like,
yeah, you just use the Tord situation for that. You don't like. I don't fault Tord specifically. I think, like I said, that I think already under the current rules, I think Tord is riding the line a little bit and maybe should be receiving more warnings than he does. But I don't have anything against Tord. Like either the rules need to be enforced better, or if the judges and everyone feel like what Tort is doing is not against the rules, then your gripe should be with the rules, right? I don't hold anything against Tort. I don't think anyone should. I don't think like being toxic towards Tort isn't like the solution here. Like you
yeah.
either think the rule that Tort is currently breaking the current rules and that the rules need to be enforced better, but if the judges tell you that no, that's not it, then you should be like, okay, well, I think the rules need to be changed, and that's what you should be advocating for, right? Like, but we're not holding anything against Tort. You should never have any anger or hatred towards specifically. It should be about are the rules being enforced, and if they're not, okay, well then I think the rules should change. I think those are both fine things to think as well. I think those are both two things that are like fine to think with for sure. But yeah, you're never like yeah, and then like you said, like playing within the rules, like things change up. But the same thing, like if you're trying to take like maybe you make a play where you only ever set up 2 attackers, not only ever set up 2 attackers, but you put all your resources into 2 attackers. Once they both get knocked out, you lose, but you only need to draw 4 prize cards. So the first one takes 2 prize cards, the second one takes 2 prize cards. You've drawn the 4 prize cards, the game is completed, and now you win the match because of that, right? So um or now you win that game and you tie or you go to game three and top cut, whatever it might be. But yeah, I think improving on the best out of three system is way better than going to any kind of best of one or best of two. Best of two should no one should ever say best of two ever again. Best of one is definitely best of two is so bad. Never don't say it. No one should ever mention best of two ever again.
Well, we'll
Peace.
definitely, Azul and I, keep our we're in the loop and like see what people are talking about on Twitter and stuff like that. So if we see any big updates or anything like that, we'll definitely let everyone know in a future episode of the podcast. Anything else, Azul, you want to hit on before we get out of here and get into our Patreon bonus episode?
No, I think that covers everything for me. Chip, go ahead, send us home.
Yeah, thanks a bunch to everyone for listening. As always, if you did, please be sure to leave us a like, a rating, a review, a comment, any of those things. They all help us out so much. Totally free and super easy and fast way for you to show your support to us here on the podcast. And if you want to stay in touch with us, the best place to do that is over on the website formerly known as Twitter. You can follow myself at Chip Ritchie. Azul is at Azul_GG. And then you can also follow the podcast here at uncommon_energy. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on your favorite podcasting platform, all of those things. So you make sure you never miss an episode.
Yeah. Appreciate the support as always. Catch you all next week for another Tuesday episode before the Wednesdays start hitting at 7 a.m. Eastern. We're going to go ahead and jump into the bonus episode over on the Patreon.